invasion, which is what your power was?
Ordinary life was turned upside down immediately after the invasion. For starters, there was the fallout of security, a security vacuum created by the toppling of the regime. There were no police officers. There was no army, no Iraqi security forces, and a lot of looting and mayhem. It was almost as if just crazy people had taken over the streets. So people were terrified. They didn't know where to go if their car got stolen or if their house items got looted. There was power outage, there was sewage problems, clean water problems. People were getting killed randomly. So by no means of the imagination was anything normal.
Well, Dexter Filkins of the New York Times, who also spent quite a bit of time in Iraq, wrote a piece in this Sunday's Times, actually, where he describes the enormous changes that have occurred in Iraq, that he was just shocked at how so much has returned to normal, quote, normalcy in the country. And obviously he was tying it to the surge and the effect of the surge on everyday life of Iraqis. And what's your sense then with this? More time has passed of the American role in this occupation and its impact on the Iraqi people?
The American role has really evolved in this war. You know, it was first that they went in to topple the regime and bring, build a new nation and bring democracy and in place a government. And slowly it evolved into what is now, the Americans basically acting as a buffer zone between the Sunnis and the Shias to prevent a civil war from happening. So the goals of this war and the responsibility of the troops really changed as security changed on the ground. About whether life has returned, it's definitely gotten better, but what we have to realize is that extreme measures have been taken for life to somewhat return to normal. There are blast wall barriers around neighborhoods in Baghdad, separating the Sunnis and the Shias. There's been a natural population movement where the city is ethnically divided along ethnic and sectarian lines.
The report that just came out of UCLA saying that the fact that that things have somewhat calmed down is not because of the surge, but because of ethnic cleansing.
I think that the fact that the violence came down is because of three reasons. It's because of the surge, one reason. It's also because of the Americans putting the Sunni insurgents on the payroll. They're paying about $300 a month to former insurgents who were killing the troops a few years ago, because they're now trying to get on board with the American plan, and also because of the Shia ceasefire. But these things are very fragile. I mean, it could, you take one out of the equation and things could fall apart again. I think there was a report yesterday that assassination cells have returned to Baghdad, killing people. So,
why do you think your email was such a shock to people? There were reporters who were there. You were there yourself, writing for a mainstream paper for the Wall Street Journal.
That's a good question, Amy. I've often thought about that, and I think it's probably because the email was personal, and it didn't just pile facts on top of each other the way that we do when we're writing for the paper or for any media organizations. I think the fact that it had some emotion in it, that it kind of wasn't distant. War is a very emotional, very traumatizing experience to both witness and go through. And I think I had sort of set aside those objective standards of writing a piece and had really spoken from my heart. And I think that kind of grabbed people.
One group that's rarely talked about much in the war in Iraq are the children of Iraq. Right. What is your sense in terms of the everyday life of children in Iraq has been both the immediate and obviously the long-term consequences to the Iraqi population of children exposed to so much trauma?
I mean, I can give you an example and anecdotes of my book. There's a chapter that I talk to this family whose mother is Shia and father is Sunni, and they were having a really hard time with their children who were in elementary school. The first grader refused to go to school the first week because he was afraid that if he goes to school, something bad would happen to his mother, or that he would die. When they asked him, what should we tell the teacher, he said, tell him that the insurgents kidnapped me. So this is the mindset of a 7-year-old child, that kidnapping and murder and assassination is just part of the vocabulary. Kids were getting teased because they were Sunni or they were Shia. They were dealing with very difficult issues like, parents getting killed or getting kidnapped, and I think it has really long-lasting effects. I mean, if you think that the next generation in Iraq has lived and grown up in war and mayhem, it's bound to have some deep psychological scars.
You've covered the Intifada, you've covered Iraq, you've covered Afghanistan. You're Iranian American. Yes. You got your degrees from Tehran University and from Columbia Journalism School. What was it like covering Iraq as an Iranian American?
It was very interesting because my memories of Iraq, my first time that I ever heard the word Iraq was when I was 8 years old, and the war started with Iran and Iraq, and I was in Tehran, and they were bombing the city, and everyone said these are Iraqi warplanes. So for me to be on the other side of the border was, very personal, but it was also, it gave me some insight because I knew the culture, I could relate to the people, and they kind of saw me as somebody who could maybe understand them better because I was from a country next door and could kind of have a better understanding of their traditions.
And we just have a few seconds, but you've also covered Afghanistan, and as we see the war in Afghanistan spiraling out of control now, your thoughts?
I think that that's something that needs to be paid attention to because that's where the Al-Qaeda cells are located, and it's unfortunate that they couldn't finish what they had started in Afghanistan and bring some sort of a stability before going to Iraq. And I think as we see now, there may be a redeployment of troops back to Afghanistan, but things are definitely deteriorating very fast there, and it's very, very dangerous.
Well, I want to thank you very much for joining us. Farnaz Fassihi has written the book, Waiting for an Ordinary Day, The Unraveling of Life in Iraq. And that does it for today's broadcast. Democracy Now! Is produced by Mike Berkshire, Photo producer, Aaron Matta, Angela Comet, Steve Martinez, Nicole Salazar, Honey Massoud, Robbie Karen, Mike DeFilippo, Miguel Noguera, Peter Curries are our engineers. Thanks also to Becca Staley, Angie Kiefer, Samantha Chambly, Jason Noor, John Randolph, Kieran Krug Meadows, Rockham Penny, Vesta Godars. Our website is democracynow.org, and today I get to take off the arrest band from the Twin Cities Police. The police have dropped the charges against us at Democracy Now! Along, they say, with the other reporters that were covering the Republican National Convention. I'm Amy Goodman with Juan Gonzalez. Thanks for joining us.